Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
Oh, and look at that. And of course, I'm not completely set up because I forgot to put my monitor on. There we go. Now we got my monitor going. Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. As always, I am your host, Duck. And today is, you see here, photo Q&A. So first off, how's everybody doing? It's been, the weather's been a little bit on the hot side. I was just talking off camera with Alan and discussing how my studio, even though it sits partially underground and it usually stays fairly cool during the summer, it's been a little bit up there in temperature this past couple of days. So hopefully you guys are taking care of yourself and staying cool and hydrated, right? And of course, Alan, welcome back from your little vacation, your global gallivanting.
No, mom turned 94 and I had to be there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You better. Damn it. That's mom.
And
You know.
I saw mom and I saw my brother for the first time in 40 years.
Holy cow.
Yeah. We had an argument in '85, and then my sister finagled, says, well, she told her, no, he's not coming in this week, he's coming next weekend.
Oh, she.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did one other thing.
Yeah.
And so as soon as we saw each other, it was like, the hell,
Yeah.
it's mom's birthday. It worked.
Yeah. Oh, well, as long as it all worked out. So, all right. So to get conversation started, well, first of all, I want to say that about 3 weeks ago, I attended a workshop with two renowned senior photographers, Josh Hanna and Nathan Loker. So if you get a chance to look them up, their product is called Dynamic Senior Portraits, and they are friggin' phenomenal. And I think I mentioned it previously that I really their style really appeals to me because I like that kind of like really dark, moody, cinematic look, and it's something that appeals to me that I've done a lot of in my product work for my portfolio stuff, but it's like nobody hires me to do that kind of work in product. Everything's got to be bright and on white and all the very sterile type photography. But anyway, the reason I mention it is because my wife, for the longest time, has been hounding me to get more involved in family portraiture. And she, because she sees my work and she says, you're so good at it. And it's like, I don't want to do it. It's always been a hang up with me. But I've softened on that account a little bit, and so I've started doing some family stuff. I have some clients that have hired me to do some family portraits and some baby portraits. I don't know if I'll ever get back into baby portraits. That's very, very tough. It's not an easy thing. But working with teenagers, I got two one almost teenager and one's definitely a teenager going on 30 grandkids. And so they become my guinea pigs and I do a lot of testing with them. And, their mom says, if you ever want to get into doing portraiture, I know a lot of moms, and so between the daughter and the wife saying you should be doing portraits, I'm really seriously looking into starting a new product line and offering portraits. So anyway, I bring all that up because we had the workshop with these two guys. But if you've ever been to a photography workshop, you know that you're in there with a bunch of people. And I know when I give workshops where there's a time constraint, and I have 10, 12 people in front of me, the sad reality is that often I have to kind of bring the level of the teaching to the lowest common denominator so that nobody gets lost. And what ends up happening is the people who are a little bit more advanced feel a little cheated because, I'm now covering stuff that they've already learned, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And the ones that are coming in fresh, they're struggling to keep along with the lesson because most of it is going over their head. So as an instructor, it's difficult to find that middle ground when you're in a homogenous group like that. And it's no different when you're an advanced photographer, pro photographer, in with other pro photographers, taking classes with other, that are being produced by other pro photographers, which is what the situation was recently. None of us were new to photography, all right? But the thing is, there are some photographers who are very much natural light photographers, and they have, a modicum of knowledge. Actually, let me switch this. A modicum of knowledge about flash, but they don't use it on a regular basis. They understand the concepts, but because they're not fully versed, it's a little bit over the head. All right. So again, even with us pros, a lot of time the level goes down to the lowest common denominator. All right. Now, I went in, and the workshop was basically three parts. It was the practical how to shoot, which I didn't even need to be there. I knew all that stuff because I have done that kind of photography before. Then there was the how to edit, which was nice. It's nice to see how somebody else edits an image. All right. I did pick up a couple of things, that I never quite thought of, as far as approaches to editing. So I got something out of that. And then there was the business side of it. Okay. Which, now I run my own photography business, but it's different. I work on a business to business model. I'm dealing with other business people to accomplish a goal, to solve a task, to offer a solution to a business problem, which is totally different than providing a family portrait, where it's more of an emotional context, and it's about the emotional sales, and it's about selling prints and selling albums. For those of you who ever tried anything with like wedding photography, it's not so much the shooting, it's how you package it and present it after the fact so that the client has these lasting memories. In business to business, if a memory product lasts a year and then they up and change the design, who cares about the photographs? They just get new ones, right? It's not the same when it comes to family and friends. These become historical photographs that people can look back on. So there's a different element involved. So when they started talking about, the business aspect, I was all ears because this was all fairly new to me. Marketing is marketing. I know the fundamentals of marketing, but it's the little intricacies. All right. So, we had all this good stuff, and, a friend of mine and I decided, what would be great is if we did a follow-up where the people who are struggling with, understanding the concepts of the actual practical aspect of the lighting, if they brought their gear and we did a workshop where they get to use their gear to kind of replicate this, and it just reinforces everything. And that's what we did this past Saturday, and it went over awesome. We had a good time. Fortunately, it rained early in the day. We had to, obviously postpone the start time, but it was nice and cool. All right. So I just throw that out because, I thought this was pretty interesting for myself. And maybe you guys can pick up a little bit something in regards to how you look at workshops. All right. But the interesting conversation came on the trip to the workshop. I picked up a photographer friend who is legally blind. It has nothing to do with this story. But she is in charge of putting together these different events. And one of the events that she's working on is bringing back the image competition to CTPPA. Because of COVID, it kind of started, going downhill. And last year it was like nobody was really participating. We're looking to bring it back. So the ride to the workshop was all about, how should we format our competition? Now we are, CTPPA is its own organization. We're a bunch of, professional, semi-professional photographers, and we even have some, past photographers who were professional, but now just do it because they still love photography, but they're not really making a money off of it. Okay. So we got a great mix. But because we are a PPA affiliate, that means that we have to support the national PPA organization with certain aspects of, the educational process. And part of it is gaining points, merit points that go towards our education. All right. And we have different levels. You can go, like I've attained my certified professional photographer certification. But in order to maintain it, I got to do X number of work in community hours and teaching, attending workshops, and entering competitions. And every time I do that, I get a point here, a point there, 3 points there, and so on. All right. So we're bringing back image competition. And it's been a while, and they decided they were going to revamp the rules. And this is where, I found a conversation a little bit interesting because obviously we want the local chapter to kind of reflect what the national association does with their rules. But we got to talking about how people who enter these competitions, her included, she was giving some examples of some of her frustrations with other competitions, how, different organizations run it differently, and the expectations are all over the place, and tempers kind of get a little heated, and people throw hissy fits and throwing accusations, and why is this image here and not in that category. And, if you guys who are members of various photo groups here in Connecticut who do these competitions, you've probably come across these. But I want to make one.
I've heard people discuss that because of the PSA rules. And the
Yes.
PSA rules are
Yes.
so complex. There's one group, I don't know which group it is. They decided they're doing nature. I think it was Newtown, Flagpole. They have decided that for next year, they're not going to do PSA nature rules. They're just going to do nature. Now,
Right.
people in North Haven have gone back and forth on this, but because they changed the rules, it gets very dicey. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, well, and that's just the thing because there are several national organizations. All right. Obviously, I belong to PPA. You belong to what? Probably NECCC, right?
They
Or
use PPA,
PSA,
they use PSA
right?
rules,
Uh,
and they do enter in NECCC plus
right.
PSA.
Okay. And
And
I think there's one more cap or something.
we don't do
Yeah.
cap.
All right.
But the
But
problem is,
But the
the
thing is,
problem,
there are all these different organizations who have different ways of running their photographic competitions.
and the problem is with NECCC, if let's say let's say you had a picture of a duck,
Hmm.
but none of us in North Haven realized that there was a hand of man someplace in it.
Yeah.
And they send it to NECCC. If NECCC sees that, that's points against the
Yep.
club too, not just the person,
Oh,
but the
that's
club.
not fair.
That's what our NECCC rep said.
Yeah. 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 Oh, and there's also ASMP. That's the other one I forgot. But yeah. All right. So, but technical aspects aside, uh, she was saying that it's hard navigating because now she's working with a couple of photographers on trying to kind of hammer out the new regulations for us. What makes sense to our members, but also being in compliance with the national organization. All right, and people who organize these for your clubs are in the same boat. All right, they have to navigate the rules so that they appease the membership but also comply with national rules. All right, and so my take on this is the national rules are there because they're designed to meet certain expectations of their membership, and different organizations are going to have different requirements. So, for example, if you are a member of WPPI, you're probably not going to have competitions with you know landscapes and wildlife because it has nothing to do with weddings. So the competitions for that type of organization will have different categories and will have different requirements for those categories. So it's it the what's the word the burden of the burden of conformity, I guess you can say, lies on the person who's submitting an entry into any given competition. Yeah, there are a lot of open competitions that are pretty much open to anybody, and these tend to be like really really broad all over the place, and you now have to kind of navigate. All right, well, I have this image, what category in this open competition does it fall into? All right, and it's up to you to make sure that you put it into the proper the proper category. Otherwise, you run the risk of it getting booted out, and then you're losing money on something that could have been very easily avoided. All right. So in the discussion, she says, "Yeah, but I've seen people enter images into a category that shouldn't have." Although you can kind of sort of see. And one of the examples that she gave is that one of the competitions she entered in had a wildlife category and had an artistic category. Okay. And the wildlife category obviously is about wildlife. And the artistic category is about artistic interpretations of your image. And it tends to be a little bit broad because it can incorporate additional elements like composites. All right. And she says she got frustrated because she entered what she thought was an image that would place. All right. If you've never heard that term, what it means is that she felt really, really strongly that it could take one of the prizes, either first, second, or third, but it would place somewhere. All right. And she lost out to an image of a bird launching off of a branch, and they did a sequence of shutter clicks and then combined 3 of them into a single image. So you see the 3 different stages of the bird jumping off and coming into flight. It's wildlife, but is it? Because it's also a composite. And she felt that, the composite, because it's a fact that it is a composite, should have been put into the artistic category rather than being left in the wildlife category. And, she kind of felt dejected and cheated. And, she says, well, anybody who does a composite in the wildlife category, obviously that's going to be a much better image and they'll always win, So what should I do? She says, should I start doing composites and competing that way? And, so that brought up an issue. And one of the things that I would say, and this can be tricky and controversial, okay, depending on your organizations, but I am of the opinion that if you feel somebody entered into the wrong category and it was not called out by one of the organizers or one of the judges, which can happen, because usually the people who take the images in may not necessarily be the judges, okay? And the people that are taking images in may not be looking at every single image all that closely, because depending on the size of the submissions, if you got 500 images coming in, are you going to fine tooth comb through 500 images, making sure they're all in the category, or are you going to kind of entrust that the people who are submitting them are being honest? Well, obviously, in this particular case, probably not. And it went through the initial check, and then it got in front of the judges. Now, the judges could have caught it and say, hey, wait a minute, I think this is in the wrong category, but they didn't, because they may have been, well, first, they're there to judge. They're not there to figure out what category it's in, and they may not be even cognitively thinking of, hey, this is a wrong category. All right. Or they say, well, it's not my job. Somebody else handled putting it into categories. My job is only to judge what gets put up in front of me. So right there, they may not call it out. Okay. So things can't fall through the crack, but she noticed it. She thought that it was in the wrong category. All right. And I asked her, did you bring it up with anybody? Did you call that image out? And she said, no, she didn't. She figured, what's the sense after the fact? They've already judged it, and I told her, there's nothing wrong with calling out a misjudge after the fact. It's done in much bigger competitions than the local ones. All right. As a matter of fact, very recently, a photographer who photographed an elephant, somebody who with a keen eye noticed that there was some manipulation to one of the ears, and it came to find out that the elephant was shot in one of those group situations, and somebody who was in that group noticed that, hey, that elephant I recognize it because I was on that group. That elephant had a torn ear, and the photographer fixed the ear before submitting it. All right, and that went against the regulations. That got called out after the fact, and then they retroactively removed that prize from the winning photographer. It does happen, and there's no reason why it cannot happen on a local level. If you feel somebody has entered a competition, they're wrong. No, let me rephrase that. If you feel somebody entered one of their images in the wrong category, and it doesn't matter if they won or lost, if you spot that the fact that they entered into the wrong category, don't be afraid to call it out, because it could just be an oversight on the part of the event promoters and the judges. Okay, and it's unfair to the rest of the members if it's not called out, especially if somebody enters a image into a competition that actually wins a prize in the wrong category. That's very unfair to everybody else. So don't be afraid to call it out. Okay. So that's the one thing that I, would say about competitions. All right. But the more important little bit of information I want to give to you is this. All right. And to illustrate this, I'm going to step aside and tell you a different story. My oldest grandson is a little on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. Okay. Not enough that, it's debilitating, but it's very obviously that he thinks differently than everybody else. Okay. And because of that, he is very, very competitive. Very competitive. All right. In one way, it's good, to be, competitive. But when you're so competitive that it debilitates you, then it becomes a problem. And we found that with him, he will compare himself against what everybody else is doing, and if he can't be number one, he gets very, very frustrated. And he'll either usually what he'll do is he'll give it 110%. And when he finds out that giving it 110% doesn't put him in first place, he gets very, very frustrated and then quits and moves on to something else. All right. Which can be a problem, because if you're always competing, you can't be the best at everything. It's impossible. Okay. Some of us don't even get to be the best at anything. We're just kind of, we ride the wave of being, good. And sometimes good is good enough. All right. But if you're in the mindset that you have to be the best, and then you can never accomplish the best, it becomes a problem. So what I did is, he likes playing a few video games. And every time he starts getting frustrated and he's yelling at the remote control and like, ah, right? I tell him to put the brakes on, all right? And think about it. You're playing a computer. The computer could care less. It's programmed to give you a response, all right? And according to software, it doesn't care about feelings. It doesn't care about first place. It could care less if it won or lost. It's a piece of software. The only one that's getting frustrated is you, my grandson, getting frustrated because you can't beat a friggin' machine. So I told him, you're thinking about it the wrong way. You are not competing against the machine. You're not competing against the software. You're not competing against the characters up on that TV screen. You are competing against yourself. All right. You're competing against your abilities. All right. So if you should be getting frustrated about anybody, you should be getting frustrated about yourself. All right. And yeah, it's a little lesson that's hard to sink in for him, but he's getting there. He doesn't get as frustrated anymore, and he's realizing that, yeah, especially now that he's starting to go into high school. He decided he's going to try out for the football team, and he realizes that the guys in the football team are much bigger than he is. All right, and he goes, Ma, some of these kids, they're not kids, they're men. He's 13, and it's funny, but it's starting to sink in. All right. So now coming back to the image competition and talking with my friend Lexi, I started explaining to her, when you put in images into a competition, you are not competing against others in that competition, because their photography does not matter to you. It has no bearing on you. It has no influence on you. You're going to do your photography the way you want it, what makes you happy. All right? What you're competing on is your former self. All right? You want to be better than who you were yesterday. So whenever you enter a new image, this new image is not competing with everybody else in that round. It's competing with your previous image. Okay? Now, the nice thing about being in a specific category is that you are now in a group of like-minded individuals who like to shoot similar things that you do. So if you're in if you like photographing wildlife and you enter your image into the wildlife category, you can see variations of of the type of photography you like. So now you get to see how others approach the problem that you also approached. You're not competing against them. They're going to do their own thing. They got their own different equipment and different ways of working, but you can learn from that. You can pick up little techniques, all right? Especially for those who place high by the judges. So the ones that take the first place and the second place and third place, really study those. You're not competing against them, but you're going to use them to study. Find out, why did that one win first place? Okay? Now, over time, you're going to probably come to the realization that I did a long time ago, is that it's very subjective. All right? Take that first place winner, put it in another show with a different set of judges, and it could lose. Just like that. So it's not the fact that is a great image. All right? It's the fact that 3 people thought it was the best out of that group. All right? So you can't compete against that. There's no way you can compete against that, because there's no measure of what some judge is going to consider good or bad. All right? But you can measure what you think is good or bad about your own photography. All right? And the nice thing about competitions is that you now have something to gauge by and compare against. All right, because as we all know, a lot of times photography is a very solitary endeavor. We're out there with our own thoughts and our own methods of working, and our own subjects, and we get into our own heads, and we come home and we spend time and we edit our images, And depending on our skill set, you know, we could be good at editing or we could be bad at editing. All right. Or it could be a category where it's very minimal editing. All right. So there are way too many variables to compete against anybody else. You can only compete against yourself. And the only person you can compete against yourself is your prior self. What was your skill set back yesterday? All right. And how can I get it so that tomorrow my skill set is better than today? So the next time I enter an image, it's going to be better than the one I entered today, because as I'm looking at it, it's better than the one I entered last week. Make sense? You know, and it's funny because she goes, wow, you know, I never quite thought of it that way. Because, you know, in her mind, it's a photo competition where your image is competing against others, because that's how it's advertised. You know, you may win first prize. All right. Or here's first prize winner out of 500. Okay. So we all get into this mentality of competing against others, but in actuality, no, you're actually competing against yourself. All right. So anyway, that is my food for thought, and hopefully it'll start causing questions to come up. So let's open it up to the board here. Anybody have a different take?
No. Actually, your examples was very good. In the last, I think I've been in the same club for about, I think, since COVID. New Haven club, very loose, very, you know, I think it's more easygoing than anything else, and they let a lot of things slide, which is fine. But in competition, like end of the year, it does get a little bit more serious.
Mm-hmm.
And you're absolutely correct in how if you see something, you should say something.
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot from other people's photographs. I said, "Whoa, that's nice. I think I'd like to try that next time." As you said, when you're at your scheduled meeting before, when you're listening, you've been over and over again, but you picked up a little thing, you know, one little thing, two little
Yes.
things. So now you get to take that home and put that in your bucket of tools.
Yep.
It works. It
Yeah.
works.
And actually, you know, you just reminded me of something. Pre-COVID, one of the things that I was very involved with were a couple of photographic forums. If you don't know what a forum is, it's basically an online chat room.
Mm-hmm.
The photographic forums are a good forum will be set up with two big categories. All right, I'm talking about sharing images forums. They also have, you know, the buy and sell section and things like that. But they have two main sections for showing off your photography. One is a showcase, and the other one is a critique, where you can have, you know, your peers critique your work. And then with each one of those, they usually have categories that kind of mirror each other. So you'll have wildlife, and you may even have a category, subcategory just for birds, automotives or transportation, models, you know, portraits. It could be very granular depending on, you know, the organizer of the forum. But the nice thing is that when you went into these, you know, obviously there are certain groups that appeal to you, and there are groups that you never even go into because they you know have nothing to do with what you photograph. And you get to know, you know, some of the regulars to the forums, the regular contributors and the moderators of the forums. And I always stress that if you can get into a good photographic forum, and again, this is pre-COVID, Things have changed post-COVID. But pre-COVID, if you got into a good forum that had a strong community with fair practices about critiquing, it was a good way of really, really upping your game and getting a fast-tracked education with your photography. And it came in two levels. One, you submitted your image, and what I always suggested is when you submit an image for critique, don't just say, hey, here's my image, what do you think? That's open-ended. 100 people can look at it, and 100 people are going to have 100 different, suggestions of what you do. And in the end, you just feel ripped apart, and well, this guy says this, but this guy says the opposite, and here's the third one that says something completely different. Who am I to believe? Okay? So I usually say, when you submit an image for critique, ask a question. Look at your image, figure out what was it that you were struggling with when you took that image. Was it composition? Was it lighting? Was it, the subject matter? Was it the editing? Something about it, okay? Put it out there in the community and says, hey, when I took, and don't just make it a 1 or 2 sentence thing. Give people something to chew on in order for them to give you a critique. It says, hey, I took this image, and as I was doing it, this was the scenario, this is the equipment I was using, this is the problem I encountered. What do you think is a good solution for this problem? And you'll be surprised how pointed the solutions will come at you, all right? And like anything, there may be 2 or 3 different solutions. You look at them, and you can test them all out. All right. Or you can find the one that you feel fits into the way you work and give that a try. And I found that people really learned a lot in that way.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would suggest is critique other people's work. All right. And I got a lot of pushback on this, especially from the beginners. It says, well, I don't know enough about photography to critique somebody else's work. And I said, that's bullshit. Because you can look at a photograph and you can say, I like that photograph, or I don't like that photograph. All right? This is something very subjective that we all do without even really thinking about it. But because it's a learning environment, what I encourage people to do is, all right, what's your gut instinct? Do you like it? Do you not like it? And then, what specifically do you like about it? What specifically do you not like about it? Drill down. Try to discover what it is. Because now, when you can put a label to it, when you can put your finger to the problem, you'll begin to be able to measure that against your own photography. All right, because as you're probably very well aware, our photography for ourselves is very personal. It goes beyond just the visual. It's about the experience. We know where we were. We know what the weather was like. We can hear the sounds. We can turn to our memories and we can smell the smells that we encountered when we took that picture. All right. We may not see the other people in that photo, but we know who we were with in our group or our family members. All right. We know everything that led up to that moment and beyond. So there's a lot more emotion into our own photography than somebody else's. So we tend to be a little blind with our own photos. So if we can take a step back and say, okay, I'm not going to look at my photos. I'm going to look at somebody else's who shoots similar subjects to me, and I'm going to see if I can critique it. After a while, and it doesn't take much, 4, 5, 6 critiques, you're going to start seeing a change. All right. And you're going to say, I recognize that problem in my own photography. and I told that person he should try this, I should take my own lesson and I should start doing that. Because by looking at a third party image and recognizing the problem, and you know, the little light bulb goes over the head and go, oh, I know the solution. All right, this is the solution. All right, when the tables are turned, because we are so involved in our own, and we're you know, in a different frame of mind, often the solution slips us. So by having a little bit of background and critiquing somebody else's work, now when we see it on our own, that trigger will snap and go, oh, let me take a step back. Aha, that's the problem that I saw over there. This is the solution I offered them. Let me try it here. And all of a sudden, you're putting the solution into your workflow, and you've elevated your own photography to the next level. Okay. Sadly, a lot of the really, really good forums were killed off during the pandemic. And to be honest, I haven't gone back after the pandemic to see if there's any good ones left. You know, but there are photo groups within Facebook. All right. I belong to a couple of them, and it's kind of like a forum. It doesn't, you know, Facebook, it's a very quick, it's here today, gone tomorrow type of thing. Unlike a forum, the nice thing about the forum is every post became historical record. So you can always go back to a previous post and look about what was written about that specific critique. All right. And if you're clever enough, you can bookmark some of them that really mean something to you. Can't do that with Facebook. All right. So Facebook, if a post lasts a week, maybe 2 weeks at the most, that's okay. Because hopefully the problem that pops up is something that gets corrected fairly quickly. So you throw up an image into the whatever group you join there, and there'll be a group for everything. And that's the probably the other downside to Facebook. Unlike a forum where you can kind of stay within one ecosystem, Facebook's all over the place. You know, so if you're into wildlife and then you're into birds and you're into, you know, zoo pictures, all right, they're all within the animal category. In a forum, they'd all be right there. But on Facebook, you got to dig through, all right? And there may be several groups because different organizers say, I don't like the way they did their group, so I'm going to start my own group, and it's going to be different than the other group. So it becomes, you know, a mess of noodles, all right? But when you find a group that you like, you know, after a while, you start learning who the players are and who the ones that are giving good critiques. And don't be afraid, give a critique. That's what these groups are for. Most of them in the regulations that you have to agree to when you sign up states right there. All right? Don't just take. You got to give too. All right? Give a critique. Offer up one of your images for critique. All right? Most people will come in and says, I'm just going to take. I'm going to throw my images. Give me the critique. I want to learn. All right? And they never contribute back to the community. Okay? Give something back. All right? Because you're going to get more out of giving back than you do from receiving the critiques, honestly. All right? That's how it was for me. Okay? Because, you know, those of you who've been with me long enough, you know my old adage is, if you really want to learn something, teach it. It's going to force you to learn it really, really quick because somebody's depending on you to give them an answer. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
So anyway, but anyway, the reason I bring up the forums thing is because a lot of competitions are kind of set up the same way. They have these little niches. This is wildlife. This is boudoir. This is black and white. This is, you know, street photography. This is, you know, whatever. Okay. So there are categories that are going to appeal to you the best. All right. And if you can, if the competition allows, some will charge a little extra, you know, but if you can, see if you can get a critique from the judge. All right. I know a lot of clubs will offer that service where the judge will come in, and if you want a critique, they'll take a few minutes. They're not going to go, you know, super in depth, but they're going to gloss over probably the key points, all right, of what they like and what they don't like, and maybe if they're good judge, they'll offer a solution to how you can fix it the next time around. So now you have something to go for, all right? And my suggestion, if you want to place, all right, don't just scrap what you just did and say, I'm going to try something completely different. No. Do the same subject. Replicate it, all right? Say, okay, this is what was wrong. Let me fix those, all right? So that way, the next time, yeah, it's on the surface, it may look very similar to what you submitted last month, but technically it's going to be much better because you've incorporated all the lessons of how to improve it into your next shot. All right. So don't just say, oh, well, you know, maybe shooting birds isn't my thing. I'm gonna submit this elephant picture from the zoo. Don't do that. You're gonna hurt yourself. Okay. Stick to what you like. All right. Stick to your strengths. All right, especially in competition, and go on. All right. Now, Alan, you actually mentioned something else too that I want to touch on. Is you said that at the end of the year you hold the big
End of the year.
end of the
Right.
year, yeah. And you said something interesting where you said that they're a little lax with the lead ups, but they're
Right.
pretty strict on the end of year.
Big
And
difference. Yeah.
yeah, that can be a blessing. All
Oh, it's
right.
a blessing. In this case, it's a blessing because you put your best work out there for a whole year. You take your best you have, it's already been shown, and then you bring it in for end of the year,
Yeah.
and that's what you're most proud of. You know, this is my best. This is the best I can do,
Yeah.
and then you get critiqued, and then you get judged, which it's my
Yeah.
favorite time of the year.
Well, what do you mean by they're a little bit lax or a
Uh,
little bit relaxed?
during the course of the year, um, there's 5 subjects they go through.
Okay.
One is the subject matter, then there's black and white, there's artistic, and there's wildlife and straight art. Anything
Okay.
goes. So there's a lot. I mean, there's covered.
Oh yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
covered. Everybody's covered. So at the end of the year, yeah, it's a long meeting, but it's really worthwhile.
All right.
Really.
So what makes the end of year meeting different than or the end of year judging different than the lead ups?
Oh, well, the judges at first, they're different. They're high quality judges that we know very well and they're all professional photographers.
Mm-hmm.
And during the course of the year, we'll get someone from another club, and you know, it's kind of lax. But end of the year, these people know what they're talking about.
Okay. All right. All right. I okay. Because I was thinking, you know, maybe there was something where they let certain things slide at the beginning that they
Well,
wouldn't.
they do during the course of the year, just like you were talking about. Like this photograph shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
um, they're not gonna toss it out, and they're not gonna judge it though either.
Will they move it for you?
No. Mm-mm.
No. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fine because you know my opinion is that you don't want You don't want to be in a situation where everything that you do throughout the year is so relaxed that you're not learning anything, and then all of a sudden you get thrown into the deep end
Right.
at the end of the year. All right. A good organization will use the months leading up to the end of year kind of as a training to train you
Hmm.
towards that end goal of the end of year competition. You know, uh, and that's where, early on, understanding the categories so that you don't screw it up when it really counts at the end of the year. All right. That's, you want to be making those mistakes early on. And hopefully what you mean by lax is that they'll correct it, let you know that they corrected it, that you did, well, let you know that you did something wrong, but corrected it. All
Right.
right. Rather
That's
than chastise you for it.
right.
Okay.
They
So
just let you
that
know
way,
this should be someplace else next time.
right, right. But, again, if a photographer says, well, I'm just going to buck the system and I'm going to, enter what I want wherever I want, then they should be chastised. If they
Right.
keep repeating the mistake, yeah, they're there to create havoc, and we get those all the time. The people who think they're better than everybody else, and we've seen those. All right. But a good organization will have that lead up be a great training ground, so that way when you go to the end, you have the confidence, you have the skill set. All right. And you enter your images into correct places, so that you had your bet placing, so all right, I just wanted to double check, make sure on that. All right. So anyway, that's my my train of thought in regards to all this. So if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, no, that's it. Anybody got any questions on anything else other than competitions and forums?
Doug, this is
Sure.
Bob. I noticed, I don't know if Lightroom has put something in, but I found it very helpful. There seems to be something similar to Photoshop where the eye, if you close all your stuff, there's an eye on the side that said you did something in this particular area. The curves adjustment, I just
Yes.
noticed that. I don't know if that's normal. Even up on top too, they put a dot.
Yes.
That's very helpful when I'm going to go, where did I do in this photograph? What did
Yeah.
I do? Where did I do it? Oh yeah, it's something here in the curve. There's something in the first basic, and then that helps me.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, we covered that when we were talking about the presets.
Oh, we were sorry about that.
When, yeah, no, it's all right. It's all right. It's easy to miss. Yeah, that's one of the things that I suggest when you get a new preset that you don't know what it does. Make sure that your image has nothing done to it. Hit the preset, and then
And check the
in the
side.
develop module, all right, if you go down all the tabs, you'll see the eyeballs light up, and then just that's everywhere the eyeball is lit, that's something was done in that little space. Or along the top with the local adjustments
The
and the mask,
adjustments,
if you see that
the
little dot,
mask, yes.
it means something was done.
I
And
didn't know that.
that's,
I just
yeah.
thought of that.
So that's how you learn, what does this preset do. You're able to at a glance see it. Okay. But it also helps with your own workflow. And it says, oh, what did I do? Maybe you're going back a year.
Yeah, it's old
All
film, it's
right.
old one,
And
my
yeah.
old stuff. I'm saying, what
So
did I do
you look at it
here?
and it says, oh,
Oh, I
I
shouldn't
don't
have done
remember
that.
what
I
I
should have
did.
done this.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I don't remember what I did. Oh, these are it. Because, I'm looking at all these eyeballs lit up.
I
Absolutely.
don't have to open it all up and look at
No,
everything.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny because before they had that, one of the only ways you could really tell if you did anything is on the film strip. And actually, well, I'm not going to open it up. On the film strip, they used to have little icons that would appear in the corner. And there was one that would appear if there was any editing done. And I always thought that was stupid because it doesn't tell you anything about what the type of editing was done. All right. Now here's the kicker. And even going back from very beginning when I first started using Lightroom, when I imported my images, I had a custom preset that I applied to all my images across the board.
I do that now too, ever since you brought it up once.
All right. So now I'm looking at my film strip. I haven't done any editing. All right. Or I should say, I have not done any artistic editing of my own. But all my images says that they've been edited because of that stupid little icon. It's still there. That little icon's still there in the corner. All right. And, it's a worthless icon because you make one little change on one slider somewhere, it considers it as an edit and it's going to mark it as edited, even though in reality, no.
I never noticed what the input when I put in a lens correction and bumped the contrast,
Yeah.
saturation up a hair and sharpening up. I didn't notice. Does that show up too as an icon that has been done, or is that only shows up? No, good.
No,
I didn't notice that yet.
Oh, well, yeah, it will show up as an icon that says you've edited, but it doesn't tell you what kind of edit you've done.
Oh.
You know,
But the eyeball shows up.
The eyeball
Oh.
will do that. Yeah.
I didn't notice that. I didn't.
Yeah.
Be nice
So
if it didn't know that.
Like for example, one of the things that I do with everything that comes in off my camera is I apply a lens correction. Lightroom considers that an edit.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
Is it really? Is it really an edit?
No.
I don't think of it as an edit, but technically it is. But I don't think of it as an edit because I think of edits being more
what I do.
Yeah. Not just a lens correction. Lens correction is lens correction.
Lens correction.
It's getting rid of the aberration. It's getting rid of, barrel distortion and things like that. That should be standard across the board. Okay. But I don't consider it as an edit. So, but because I apply that to all my images that come into my library, Lightroom tags it as being edited. All right. That's why having a workflow that is easy to understand and know where you are is crucial. So even though it's putting that little icon in the bottom corner saying that it's edit, I don't consider them edited. All right. First thing I do, I bring them in, I go through, I give them my initial preset.
Yeah.
And all that's doing is setting up all my files for my edits. All right. So it's like it's preheating the oven for me to go in and start cooking. All right. And then I say, okay, well, I don't want to cook this one. I want to cook this one. So I separate the ones that I want to edit from the ones I don't want to edit, and the two shall not touch the same plate. Okay. And now I can concentrate on just the images that I want edited. All right. And as I edit, I will use, in my particular workflow, I use the colors. Green is when I am done with my edits. And I usually tend to go pretty much image by image and complete the edit. All right. If I have a group that are all very similar, I'll batch edit those with the auto sync. Okay. And I can batch process, 3, 4, 5 images all in one shot. And then when I'm done, turn those green, and I know those have been edited. So now if I need to take a break, go have lunch, go have dinner, maybe, I decide to watch the news and I end up falling asleep and I don't get back to my edits until the next day. At a glance, I can look at my film strip and say, oh, these are green. These are still gray. These gray ones still need to be edited. There's no double checking anything. I know right where to go, some people, they'll say they'll have, stages of editing. All right. So they may use, like, for example, they may use blue for a partial edit and green for a full edit, and gray for no edit. So it all depends on what makes sense for you guys. So, but yeah, I'm glad you became aware of that, and I'm glad it's helping.
Yeah, a little slow.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear. Progress. All right. Any other questions? I had last week we were joined by a new guy, Max. Some of you were here for that. He came into my studio today for some one-on-one in flash photography, and I was kind of hoping that he'd join us tonight. So we'll see.
He's young, maybe he's busy doing other
Yeah,
things.
probably.
Yeah, no, you know how the young kids are.
To be young again.
Oh, I don't know about that. To know what they know now, to be young again. Okay.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's the key. That's the key. It's nice to be young, but not stupid and young. I was stupid and young. I really was.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. All right, guys. If there are no further questions, next month, I haven't picked the date yet, but next month I want to do the photo hunt, and I'm looking at one of two locations. All right, it's either going to be downtown Waterbury or downtown New Britain. I have to scope out New Britain. I don't know New Britain enough to say, yeah, we're going to go here. But anyway, more than likely it's going to be on a weekend. I'm going to see maybe on a Sunday, because I know some people's, their Saturdays are pretty much eaten up. So I might do it on a Sunday, mid-August. Hopefully it's not too much of a scorcher. And we'll get together and have fun and do some photo hunt. Okay? So that's coming down the pipeline. I'll let you know when I get that scheduled. Okay? All right, guys. Thank you once again for joining me. Stay cool. Stay hydrated. All right? And we'll see you not next week, but the week after.
Have a good one, Doc.
Have a
Take
good
care,
one.
guys.
All right. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.